Well, sometimes third time's the charm. So this is probably the more interesting of the episodes I've seen of Dune Prophecy, but only by a little bit. Not by much. It's still just kind of boring. It kind of drags and stuff. There's some intriguing aspects to it. There's all kind of little mysteries set upon this. Albeit the ultimate mystery is no mystery at all, because you know where this goes eventually. But for the purposes of this series, you have this play out. Here we get more of the backstory of Valia, who's really the main character here, and I see as the ultimate villain in this whole thing. I don't know how there's any redemption going forward, and there's all kinds of violations and stuff that are revealed, which is no real surprise. Playing out here, and what this creepy agenda that the Bene Gesserit had, and so on and so forth. But it is of some interest to note that there was a moment in time where it could have gone very differently had the other woman become the Mother Superior and not end up being killed. At least that's my guess on this. I haven't read the books, so you know, but this is how I can approach it, guessing. If you read the books, you probably already know where this is going. And, granted, there'll be some changes for a time and whatnot. If they completely rewrite an outcome or what have you, that's pretty stupid. But I'm assuming this is going to be more in line with the plot of these stories of the early years of this Dune universe. So we learn about her past and the animosity between the families of the Harkonnens. It was all the movies would call them Harkonnens, and I just assumed that was apparently Harkonnen is the actual pronunciation of the name, and the Atreides. And it's one of those things, and this is a callback to old family wars from, good Lord, from the dawn of civilization that would happen out medieval times, and then into the Hatfields and McCoys, and so and you eventually get to the point where you have the war between the Harkonnens and the Atreides in Dune, and so on and so forth. And here you're seeing it more from the Harkonnens' viewpoint, as they feel they were terribly wronged by the Atreides, and maybe they were. I don't know what the story was, but ultimately it's a generational thing, and it's like you can't just be dominated by this past event of what dead people did to each other. And but if they hadn't, maybe you don't really know how fate would have turned out, but it is very much a thing that weighs in on people whenever they want to take advantage of something or use it. And that's more where I'm seeing this motivation there, that all their troubles are this, and it's more of Valia is the driving force, and she's driven her siblings really to their doom. Apparently, the closest member of her family she had was her brother, and then suddenly he's dead, and they're saying an Atreides killed him. I guess that's what happened. I'm wondering if he ran afoul of Valia and she dispatched him. I don't know, but this convinces her sister to join her in their revenge on the Harkonnens, and then she goes on into her story as well, and where she infiltrates the Atreides and gets ultimate revenge on them, but at a terrible price, as she really did have deep feelings for one of them. And so all of that plays out. Meanwhile, Valia's journey to the Sisterhood, when her real objective was revenge for the family name. And even though her own family, for the most part, certainly her elders, are not on board with this. They're of the opinion they should move on with, what they have, and that sort of thing, which is probably the right way to go. But nevertheless, that's not how Valia sees it. So, and she demonstrates her power, and her uncle calls her a witch and all this sort of thing. But slowly but surely she gets there, and then we see the hardships of trying to be in the Sisterhood whereas the Mother Superior sees something, sees great potential in her. And this is where we get the idea of how Valia ends up in the position she's in, and what ultimately comes out we saw, where she ends up murdering her rival in that, so that she can achieve the top post and guide the Bene Gesserit on the path that she sees as the way to go. So you know, there's a lot of interesting aspects and struggles and all this sort of thing. It plays out. For what it is, it's very bleak and very gray colors, but they're on this cold ice world and all this sort of thing. Even when they go to another planet where it's a forest and everything, still looks rather bleak and rather desaturated and whatnot. But other than that, it's all pretty well shot, and the performances are good and everything. But I kept coming back to this. Are the same people who worked on Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, are they working on shooting this and choosing locations? Probably even the same location, because it's even the music in this, especially this episode, sounds like Game of Thrones. And there's been a desire, of course, there's a desire for a new Game of Thrones, for a series that's that hot, that popular, and just hope it doesn't poop the bed like Game of Thrones did. But didn't seem to hurt House of the Dragon at least getting the viewership, although apparently they've run out of money where they kind of pooped the bed on that. Not to the degree that Game of Thrones did in the end, but that second season just kind of fizzled, you know. But nevertheless, the desire for that has been attempted many times, even in crap like Star Trek Discovery, tried to at least look like Game of Thrones and with the Klingons and stuff like that. But an idea of the Game of Thrones templates and whatnot applied to another genre, in this case science fiction, is not in and of itself a bad idea. You just have to craft it into one of your own. Of course, Dune predates Game of Thrones and the like, and of course at the time the Dune books were coming out, it was seen as the science fiction response to Lord of the Rings, and you know, because of and primarily for the popularity of the two books. They were, well, I don't know about rivals really, but I mean they were competitors in the marketplace of fantasy and escapism and whatnot, and so you take the science fiction route, whereas Dune really is more akin close to fantasy and whatnot, because you have the science fiction trappings in it, but it's all these ruling houses and family, and there's an explanation for it. You know, they had their war against the machines. You know, got to get rid of those Terminators, you know. And this created this sort of religious viewpoint towards that, to where they still have this incredible technology and they're able to travel the stars and everything, but at the same time they've kind of gone backward in culturally with how their societies are organized, and so then you end up with lords and kings and all this sort of thing, with the ruling houses that control these different planets throughout the Imperium, as it were. And so it fits in all those trappings and whatnot. So it's already there in that, and you certainly could see that happen. And again and again and again. And like Star Wars, of course, borrowed, yes, from Flash Gordon and John Carter of Mars, but from Lord of the Rings, but it crafted its own thing. And so Dune did this within the books and whatnot, and it's pretty much been fair to say it's had its own identity in the cinematic visions of it going forward, and now this latest attempt at it, and now this series. But the series is, I don't know, it's a little too close to Game of Thrones, just sound, style, and look. And it's just, you like, hey man, what is this, a spinoff of Game of Thrones? And then suddenly, oh wait, there's a spaceship. You know, it's like we gotta remind people that they travel in space. And so stuff like that goes along. But it's just a stylistic thing. But just and overall, you could apply this to it. But this particular episode, especially with the music and everything, it just completely, this is just Game of Thrones with a few spaceships thrown in it. And it is enough to where I'm thinking that rather than being completely immersed in the overall narratives. That being said, they did do a lot in the character development and establishing who these people are and that sort of thing. So it's, it bothered me to a point, but I don't know if it bothers anyone else really. But still, it's probably the best episode so far into it, and it just need to make it more Dune than Game of Thrones or what have you. But it's going to be hard to do because at the outset, it owes a lot to, medieval castle intrigue story type things. So, but it's just that charm, that click, whatever it is, to make it your own. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Sisterhood above all was the oath they're supposed to take, and it is interesting, of course, that Valia was not necessarily so committed because she has her own agenda, which is more to the point that she was not the right choice to be the Mother Superior of the Sisterhood. But she is. Meanwhile, there's troubling things afoot with her sister, and of course they're already in gross violation of their dogma and their rules and everything. I'll keep that quiet should you not want to be spoiled. However, they didn't start it. The previous Mother Superior, who was apparently already corrupted on this path, who ends up choosing Valia and all that. So, hey, they came by it honestly in that sense, But still, Valia, revenge for the family name is still very much her passion, rather than the Bene Gesserit, ultimately.